Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Lindsay at Lehigh Career and Technical Institute, American Studies 2, recording this for Wilmington University, EDT 6020. Today we are talking about the first New Deal. Our lesson essential question is going to be, how did the United States alleviate problems caused by the Great Depression? So the election of 1932 focused incumbent President Herbert Hoover, who's from the Republican Party, and challenger Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who is a Democrat from New York. Because of the bonus marchers that we had talked about last class, as well as failure to alleviate any problems, Roosevelt won in an electoral vote landslide, winning in all but 6 states. His first 100 days were based on the idea of his New Deal, of how to deal with daily life and not have the unfair deal that the American people just got. And it would be based on relief, recovery, and reform, which we'll explain as we go through. The first step is the Emergency Banking Relief Act, which was enacted on March 9, 1933, and 1 in 4 banks by 1932 had failed in the United States, didn't have money. Imagine going to the bank and they say, nope, we're out. So people were able to obtain their money and spend it, which allows for people to spend, and the economy can start trending upwards rather than stagnating or dropping down even further. These fireside chats where President Roosevelt explained these initiatives were made by the president. More people had radios at this point in time than had anything else in the entire world. More people in the United States had radios than they had refrigerators. He decides to take the United States off the gold standard for 9 months to inflate the dollar, make the dollar actually worth less so that if you have more of it, you can still keep your purchasing power up. Some of the things that come through to make sure that this would never happen again, and these ideas still continue on today, like the Securities and Exchange Commission, to regulate the market and stop fraud, stop people from fraudulating sales of stocks, as well as the Glass-Steagall Act, which works with this to stop people from cooking the books. This is where you take your ledger of how much money you're making, and you could say that you're making millions upon millions and millions of dollars when you're actually losing money to gain investors and try to stay afloat. Highly illegal. People still do it to this very day with like Ponzi schemes. Most famously and most largely, would be the company Enron, if you've ever heard of that. Another way to make sure that we have our money is through Federal Deposit Insurance Company, member FDIC, which protects bank deposits up to $2,500. Even if banks fail, small deposits would be protected. Just remember that if you go to a bank today and they are not member FDIC, I would not suggest investing in that bank because today it's actually up to $250,000, but this did not exist in the 1930s, and when people went to the bank and they said we're all out, it started riots, it started bank runs, and panic. Other primary ideas would be like the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, where men of 18 to 25 years old who could uproot themselves could plant trees, fight forest fires, build reservoirs, and planted over 200 million trees, featuring 3 million men, some of which were Native Americans on reservations, and some of which veterans from World War I. We also see that FERA gives money to local and state agencies, and actually the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which still exists to this day, can help restructure loans and lower interest rates. So you might end up paying a little bit more in the end, but people at this point in time are going to stop losing those 7% interest rates and can actually gain a little bit of money back into their pockets. Some of the major public works programs are the PWA, like Public Works Administration, and they create all these programs for people to build things for the public, just like the Civil Works Administration. But some of them were not seen to be as productive as they could be, so they ended up getting shut down after about 5 months and spending $1 billion. The Agricultural Adjustment Act was to limit crop production, so the value of each one goes up, taxing food processing and relocating Dust Bowl farmers. This was actually found unconstitutional after the Great Depression, but we'll talk about that later. just like the Tennessee Valley Authority used water and electric to provide cheap electricity and supervise reforestation in the region. My favorite tidbit about this is that the United States government here released beavers into the Tennessee Valley Authority to create a natural dam before they could build their own. So talk about using nature at its best. And then lastly, the NRA, which comes and was President Roosevelt's real primary goal was to establish a minimum wage, a maximum work week, an abolition of child labor, and to no lowering prices for competitive advantage. So make sure that people are making a series of money, that we are not overproducing, children are not working, giving it to people, and making sure that we are not lowering prices too low so that you're not making anything. And that's how the United States alleviated issues of the Great Depression. Thank you.